Picture this. An old auto shop. An elderly man stands at the counter, his wallet nearly empty. And the manager snaps in anger. Pay in full or get out. In that moment, a young mechanic steps forward with courage. Against the rules, against his boss. He chooses to help the old man, even if it costs him his job. But what he doesn't know is that, in the corner, a quiet figure is watching everything. This is no ordinary customer. It's John Cena, undercover in disguise. And the decision John Cena is about to make will change the entire system forever. Backhand index pointing right before we begin. Like this video, subscribe for more stories, and drop a comment. If you were in this mechanic's place, would you risk everything to stand for the truth? Because by the end of this story, you won't see John Cena as just a wrestler. You'll remember him as a true leader. The garage was alive with noise. Tools clattered, drills whined, and the acrid smell of oil and gasoline hung heavy in the air. For most people, it was chaos. For Ethan Parker, 24 years old and 3 years into this job, it was routine. He had grown used to the long shifts, the grease that never washed off, and the constant rhythm of repairs. What he hadn't grown used to was the way this place was run. Carl Hayes, the manager, had turned the shop into a money pit. Stocky and sharp-eyed, he strutted around like a king in a stained shirt. To him, every customer was a mark. Every repair was a chance to bleed someone dry. Overcharges, fake fixes, inflated bills. Ethan had seen it all. And every time, his gut twisted a little tighter. That afternoon, as sunlight streamed weakly through the grimy windows, the next test arrived. A silver sedan rolled into the bay, its engine rattling faintly. The driver stepped out slowly. He was in his 70s, thin, with clothes that had been patched and shoes that had seen better days. His wallet, cracked and worn, shook slightly in his hands. "I just need the belt replaced," the man said quietly. His voice was gentle, but steady. "It's not a big job. I can pay some today, and the rest next week." Carl didn't even pretend to care. He leaned against the counter, folding his arms with practiced arrogance. His voice cut through the shop like a hammer. "Full payment up front, or take your car somewhere else. We're not a charity." The words landed like a blow. The old man's shoulders sagged. His gaze fell to the floor. For him, the car wasn't a luxury. It was survival. But Carl had dismissed him like trash. Ethan felt heat rush to his face. He had seen this too many times before, and every time he stayed quiet, something in him broke a little more. But not today. Today, the silence was too heavy to bear. He tossed his rag onto the bench and stepped forward. His voice was sharp, clear. "I'll do it." The old man looked at him, eyes widening. "Son, don't risk your job because of me." "It's a 15-minute job," Ethan said, his tone calm but unshakable. "I'll handle it." Carl's head snapped toward him, eyes narrowing like blades. "You touch that car, Parker, and the cost comes out of your paycheck." Ethan didn't hesitate. "Then take it out of my check." The garage froze. The other mechanics stopped moving, their tools suspended in midair. For a moment, only the hum of a nearby fan filled the silence. Carl muttered something under his breath and turned away. He wasn't going to waste energy over a $20 belt. Ethan grabbed his tools and went to work. His hands moved with speed born of practice, but inside, adrenaline burned like fire. The belt slid into place, bolts tightened, and within minutes, The sedan's engine purred smoothly again. Ethan wiped the sweat and grease from his brow, then handed the keys back to the old man. "You're good to go." The man's eyes glistened. He pulled a crumpled $5 bill from his wallet and held it out with trembling hands. "It's not much, but please." Ethan gently closed the man's hand over the money and pushed it back. "Keep it. Just get home safe." For a second, the man couldn't speak. He nodded, his gratitude etched into every line of his face. Then he climbed back into the sedan and drove out of the bay, the taillights fading into the haze of late afternoon. Ethan stood there, heart pounding. He knew what he had done. He had crossed a line Carl wouldn't forgive. But beneath the fear was something else, a calm certainty that he had done the right thing. From across the garage, someone had been watching closely. A man sat quietly in the waiting area, his beard streaked with gray, his uniform no different from anyone else's. To the rest of the crew, he was just a new worker, another pair of hands learning the ropes. But this was no ordinary worker. This was John Cena. Not the global superstar fans cheered for in arenas. Not the face on posters. This was John Cena in disguise, walking among his employees as if he were one of them. Years earlier, he had bought this chain of garages, believing it would stand for fairness and good work. But complaints had piled up, and trust had eroded. He had heard enough rumors to know something was wrong. So John Cena had come undercover, determined to see the truth with his own eyes. And what he saw in Ethan Parker was not just a mechanic replacing a belt. It was defiance. It was honesty in the face of cruelty. It was the kind of courage that could not be faked. John Cena leaned back in his chair, arms crossed, his mind already racing. He had come to uncover corruption. Instead, he had found something rare, a spark worth protecting. The story of this garage was about to change, and John Cena knew the first chapter had just been written. The garage was quieter after the old man drove away, but the silence wasn't peace. It was tension. Ethan Parker could feel it in the way the other mechanics avoided his eyes, in the way Carl Hayes prowled around the shop like a wolf waiting to bite. Ethan had defied him in front of everyone, and Carl wasn't the kind of man who forgot. Ethan bent over an engine, but the work felt different now. Each turn of the wrench reminded him of what he had risked. He didn't regret helping the old man, but he knew it had lit a fuse. The fuse burned faster when the bay doors rolled up again. A black SUV crept in, its paint polished but its driver's face weary. A woman in her 30s stepped out, neat clothes but eyes heavy with worry. She gripped her car keys tightly, as if holding them together might keep the whole vehicle from falling apart. Ethan noticed immediately. He had seen this before. Customers who had been lied to so often they expected it everywhere. He walked over, wiping his hands. "What's going on with it?" She gave a nervous smile. "When I turn the wheel, it makes this groaning sound. I just need to know what's wrong. Is it serious?" Before Ethan could answer, Carl's boots stomped against the concrete. His voice boomed across the shop. "Inspections $80. Non-refundable." The woman blinked. "80? Just to check." Carl shrugged. "Shop policy. Take it or leave it." Her shoulders slumped. Ethan could almost see her debating whether to leave the car behind or swallow the cost. He spoke quickly, before Carl could push further. "Pop the hood. Let me listen." Carl's glare drilled into him, but Ethan ignored it. He leaned in as she turned the wheel. The sound was clear, a moaning groan every time the wheel shifted. Ethan checked the reservoir and saw the truth immediately. "Your power steering fluid's low," Ethan said, straightening up. That's all it is. I can top it off in 2 minutes. Relief washed over her face like sunlight breaking through clouds. That's it? I thought it was something serious. Ethan smiled. Nothing major. He grabbed the bottle of fluid, but Carl's hand shot out, blocking him. His voice was cold and sharp. That'll be a full system flush. $150. The woman froze, panic rising again. I can't afford that. Carl's smirk didn't falter. Then drive it as it is. Don't care if it fails on the road. Your choice. The garage went still. The other mechanics kept working in slow motion, pretending not to listen, but every ear was on the confrontation. Ethan set the bottle down with a hard clink. His fists clenched at his sides. He turned to the woman, his voice steady, clear enough for everyone to hear. Go down the street to the auto parts store. A bottle of fluid will cost you $5. Pour it in yourself. That's all you need. Don't let anyone charge you for more. Her eyes widened, stunned by his honesty. She glanced at Carl's furious face, then back at Ethan. Slowly she nodded. Thank you, she whispered, clutching her keys before hurrying out. Carl's face turned crimson. His voice dropped to a growl, laced with venom. You just cost me money, Parker. You think you're a hero? You're a liability. Ethan spun toward him, green eyes blazing. I'm not costing you money. I'm saving people from being cheated. You're the one bleeding them dry. Carl stepped in close, their faces inches apart. His bulk loomed over the younger man. This is my shop. You do things my way, or you're out. Honesty doesn't keep the lights on. Ethan's voice didn't waver. Then maybe the lights deserve to go out if this is what it takes to keep them on. The room vibrated with tension. Tools lay forgotten. Engines idled, but no one moved. The standoff was raw, electric. And in the corner, seated quietly in a plain uniform, John Cena finally stirred. He set down his clipboard, his jaw tightening, his eyes fixed on the scene unfolding. For hours he had remained silent, just another mechanic blending into the background. But watching Carl crush honesty in front of his workers, watching Ethan stand alone against it, ignited something inside him. John Cena wasn't ready to reveal himself. Not yet. But in that moment, he knew the test had begun. The garage was no longer just a workplace. It was a battlefield, and soon, he would have to step out of the shadows. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the garage floor. The air felt heavy, as if the walls themselves knew a storm was coming. Ethan Parker worked in silence, his mind replaying the confrontation with Carl Hayes again and again. He knew he had crossed a line, but something inside told him it was only the beginning. The storm arrived in the form of squealing brakes. A dark sedan screeched to a stop outside the bay, and the driver stormed in, slamming the door behind him. He was in his 40s, broad-shouldered, his face flushed with anger. In his hand, he clutched a folded piece of paper like it was a blade. "Where's the manager?" he barked, his voice cutting through the room. Carl, always eager to assert control, stepped forward with his usual smirk. "That would be me. What's the problem?" The man's voice shook with rage as he slapped the paper down on the counter. "The problem? Last week I paid you over $600 for a brake job. Took it to another shop yesterday. They told me the rotors were never replaced. You charged me for parts you didn't install. What kind of scam are you running?" A murmur rippled through the mechanics. Ethan froze, his hand tightening around his wrench. His worst suspicions were being spoken out loud. Carl didn't flinch. His tone dripped with false calm. "That's not possible. We do everything by the book here. Maybe that other shop lied to get your business." The man's fists clenched. "Don't you dare lie to me. They showed me the rotors. Old, rusted, untouched. You robbed me." Ethan's chest burned. He dropped his wrench with a clang that echoed like a gunshot. He stepped forward, his voice shaking but loud enough to carry. "He's telling the truth, Carl. I've seen you do this before. Charging for jobs that never happened. You've been stealing from people for years." Carl's head snapped toward him, fury blazing in his eyes. "Stay out of this, Parker. You're already on thin ice." Ethan's jaw tightened. "No, I'm done staying quiet. This man deserves the truth. And so does every customer you've cheated." The garage fell into stunned silence. Every mechanic stopped what they were doing. The man, Daniel, as Ethan would later learn, looked between them, his face twisted with fury, but also with desperate hope that someone would finally stand up. Carl tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked. "You think you know how to run this place? You're a nobody. I've kept this shop alive, and you'd all be out on the street without me." Before Ethan could fire back, a chair scraped across the concrete floor. All eyes turned. From the corner of the room, the quiet mechanic who had blended into the background all day stood up. He tugged off his grease-stained cap and let it fall to the ground. His presence seemed to fill the space, commanding attention with nothing more than silence. When he spoke, his voice was calm, deep, unshakable. "That's not true, Carl. This place survived in spite of you." Carl's lip curled. "And who the hell do you think you are?" The man stepped forward, his gaze locked like steel. "My name is John Cena, and I own this company." The room exploded into disbelief. Tools dropped. Mouths opened. Ethan's heart slammed against his ribs. The mechanic stared frozen. Even Daniel's fury stalled as the weight of the revelation sank in. But John Cena didn't waver. He stepped closer, his words cutting through the stunned silence. "I've been here all day. I've watched you lie, cheat, and bully people who trusted you. I built this company to be honest, to serve people fairly. And you turned it into a scam." Carl's smirk faltered, replaced by panic. You can't prove anything. This is just one customer." "No," Cena snapped, his voice like thunder. "This isn't one mistake. This is a pattern, and it ends now." He turned to Daniel. "You'll get your refund. Every penny. I'll make sure of it personally." Daniel exhaled, the fury in his face softening into relief. "That's all I wanted, the truth." John Cena nodded, then fixed his gaze back on Carl. His voice dropped, low and final. "You're done here. Pack your things and get out." The words struck like a gavel. The garage doors rattled as Carl stormed out, cursing under his breath, his reign shattered in seconds. The silence that followed was electric. Ethan stared at John Cena, disbelief and admiration colliding in his chest. John Cena looked back at him, his tone softer now. "You stood up when no one else did. You told the truth. That's what this place needs. And it's why you're not alone anymore." For the first time in years, Ethan Parker felt hope. The tyrant was gone. And the man standing before him wasn't just a wrestler, or even just a boss. He was a leader. The slam of the garage doors still echoed after Carl Hayes stormed out, but the silence that followed was heavier than before. Every mechanic in the room stood frozen, their eyes fixed on the man who had just revealed himself. For hours, he had been nothing but another worker in a grease-stained uniform. Now the truth rang in every corner of the shop. It was John Cena, not the wrestler on posters, not the celebrity, but the owner, the man who had built this company from the ground up. For the first time all day, Carl's absence left a vacuum, and into that silence, John Cena spoke. "Things change today," he said, his voice calm but commanding. "If you've been honest, you've got nothing to fear. If you've been part of the lies Carl ran, it's time to decide where you stand." The mechanics shifted uneasily. Some glanced at Ethan Parker. Others stared at the floor. Nobody dared to speak. John Cena's gaze found Ethan. The young mechanic looked stunned, still processing everything, but there was something in his eyes. The same fire Cena had seen when Ethan had helped the old man. The same determination when he defied Carl. "You," John Cena said firmly. "You stood up when it counted. You did the right thing when it cost you. That's rare. And it's exactly what this place needs." Ethan blinked, caught off guard. "Me? I'm just a mechanic." John Cena shook his head. "No, you're more than that. You've shown courage, honesty, and backbone. That makes you a leader. And this shop needs one." The words hung in the air. The other workers shifted again, some surprised, some skeptical. Ethan's chest tightened. He had never seen himself as anything more than a man who fixed cars and tried to survive each paycheck. But now the weight of John Cena's words pressed down on him. "I don't know if I can run a place like this," Ethan admitted quietly. "I don't know the first thing about management." "You don't have to know everything," Cena replied. "You just need integrity. Skills can be taught. Character can't." The sincerity in his tone struck Ethan deeper than Carl's threats ever had. For the first time, he felt someone believed in him. John Cena placed a hand on his shoulder, steady and reassuring. "I'll back you up, but I need you to take this shop and turn it around. Will you do it?" Ethan looked around the garage. He saw the faces of the crew, men who had worked under fear, men who had been complicit in Carl's greed, but also men who might change if they had a reason to. He thought about the old man with the cracked wallet, about the woman who had been told to pay for what she didn't need, about Daniel, furious and betrayed. Maybe this wasn't just a job anymore. Maybe it was something bigger. Slowly he nodded. "I'll do it." For the first time all day, John Cena smiled. "Good. Because we've got work to do." That evening, long after the customers were gone and the lights dimmed, Ethan and John Cena stayed behind. They sat at the scarred wooden counter with stacks of invoices, service logs, and receipts spread between them. The records told a story darker than Ethan imagined. Parts charged but never installed. Services billed that never happened. Thousands of dollars stolen from customers who had trusted them. Ethan's fists clenched as he read. How did it get this bad? John Cena leaned back, his expression grave. Because people stopped speaking up. Because men like Carl were allowed to rule unchecked. But not anymore. Ethan's jaw tightened. We'll make it right. We will, Cena agreed. Every customer who was cheated, we refund them. Every false charge, corrected. We rebuild this from the ground up. Not as Carl's shop, as a place people can trust again. It was a daunting task. The stack of papers looked endless. But for the first time, Ethan felt something stirring inside him. Hope. They worked deep into the night, the buzzing lights overhead casting shadows across the desk. Page by page, they confronted the corruption Carl had left behind. And for Ethan Parker, the weight of the day shifted into something new. Responsibility. He wasn't just fixing cars anymore. He was fixing a legacy. And John Cena was right beside him, guiding him forward. Morning light spilled across the cracked pavement outside Hayes Auto Repair. The garage opened as usual, but the atmosphere was different. Carl Hayes was gone, his shadow ripped from the shop, yet the absence didn't bring relief. It brought uncertainty. The mechanics shuffled in one by one, eyes darting toward Ethan Parker. Word had already spread. John Cena himself had revealed his identity, fired Carl on the spot, and chosen Ethan to take the lead. To some, it sounded like justice. To others, it felt like betrayal. Ethan could feel their stares as he rolled up his sleeves. He wasn't used to being at the center of attention. He wasn't sure he wanted to be. But John Cena's words from the night before still echoed in his head. Integrity is what makes a leader. John Cena arrived minutes later, his presence quiet but commanding. He wasn't in disguise anymore. He carried himself with purpose, his steps firm, his eyes scanning the shop like a soldier preparing for battle. Without Carl, the place felt leaderless, until Cena spoke. "Today we start over," he said, standing by the counter. "Every job we take will be fair. Every bill will be honest. No lies. No shortcuts." The words were simple, but they cut deep. Some of the workers nodded cautiously. Others exchanged doubtful glances. During the first break, the whispers started. Tony, one of the older mechanics, cornered Ethan near the tool bench. His hands were stained black with grease, his eyes sharp with suspicion. "So, what now?" Tony asked. "You and Cena going to play Saints? Start handing out refunds until the shop goes broke." Ethan tightened his grip on the wrench he was holding. "We're going to fix what Carl ruined. That's the only way people will come back." Tony scoffed. "People don't care about honesty. They care about cheap. Carl knew how to keep this place alive. You're about to run it into the ground." "Carl kept it alive by stealing," Ethan shot back. "And if that's what it takes to survive, then maybe it's better the shop fails than we keep lying to people." Tony shook his head and walked away, muttering under his breath. The others pretended not to listen, but Ethan knew they were. That afternoon, the first test of the new order came through the garage doors. A middle-aged man pulled in with a pickup truck that rattled like it might fall apart at any second. His expression was wary, the look of someone who had been burned before. "My buddy told me you guys ripped him off last month," the man said flatly. "Why should I trust you?" Ethan glanced at John Cena, who gave him a subtle nod. The decision was his. Ethan swallowed hard, then stepped forward. "Because that stops today. Whatever Carl did, whatever lies you've heard, it ends now. We'll inspect your truck for free. If you don't like what we find, you can walk out. No charge." The man's eyes narrowed. "Free? What's the catch?" "No catch," Ethan said firmly. "Just the truth." The inspection took an hour. They found worn brake pads, nothing more. Ethan showed him the parts himself, explained the costs clearly, and gave him the choice to fix them or not. When the job was done, the man paid without argument. He shook Ethan's hand before leaving. "If you keep running it this way," he said, "I'll tell people to come back here." It was a small victory, but in a place drowning in mistrust, it felt huge. Later that night, Ethan and John Cena sat again at the counter, combing through stacks of records. They made lists of customers Carl had overcharged, preparing refunds and apology calls. The work was exhausting, but necessary. At one point, Ethan leaned back in his chair, rubbing his temples. "It feels like we're fighting ghosts. Every name on this list is someone Carl drove away." John Cena folded his arms. "Ghosts can be faced. And once you do, they lose their power." Ethan nodded slowly, realizing that this wasn't just about fixing cars anymore. It was about restoring faith. The shop wasn't healed yet. The crew wasn't united. Trust from the town would take time. But step by step, Ethan could feel the ground shifting. The resistance was real, but so was the change. The days after Carl Hayes was fired were uneasy but steady. Customers trickled back. Small victories built trust, and Ethan Parker grew into his new role with John Cena guiding him. But stability is fragile, and Carl wasn't the kind of man to walk away quietly. One Thursday afternoon, the garage was buzzing with work when the bay doors slammed open. Carl stormed inside, his face flushed with rage, a handful of men trailing behind him. Some were former employees, others rough-looking strangers. "You think you can throw me out of my own shop?" Carl shouted, his voice booming across the floor. "This place doesn't run without me." The mechanics froze. Ethan dropped the wrench in his hand, his stomach tightening. John Cena, who had been reviewing paperwork in the corner, stood up slowly, his expression hardening. "This isn't your shop anymore," Cena said calmly, his voice carrying enough weight to silence the room. You made your choice when you cheated people. It's over. Carl sneered. Over? No, Cena. You humiliated me in front of everyone. You think I'm going to crawl away? I built this place. I know every customer, every supplier. You can't erase me. Ethan stepped forward, heart pounding. Carl, you didn't build anything. You destroyed it. You turned this place into a scam, and people suffered because of you. Carl's eyes snapped to Ethan, burning with hatred. You, the little hero. You think you're better than me because you gave away a free belt and a bottle of fluid? You're nothing without me. Ethan didn't back down. I'd rather be nothing than be you. The tension crackled like live wires. Carl's men spread out. Their presence meant to intimidate. Tools clattered as a few of the younger mechanics stepped back, unsure of what was about to happen. John Cena walked forward, closing the space between himself and Carl. His voice was low, steady, but carried the kind of authority that couldn't be faked. You brought this on yourself. You lied. You stole. You thought fear would keep everyone under your thumb. But fear doesn't last forever. It breaks. And it broke the moment you were exposed. Carl's smirk flickered. For the first time, doubt crossed his face. But he pushed it away, raising his voice louder. You think these guys are loyal to you? You think customers will forgive you? You're a fool, Cena. A name doesn't make you powerful. Control does. And I'll take it back. His men moved closer, the sound of boots echoing on the concrete. The mechanics watched, torn between stepping in or staying silent. Ethan's pulse raced, but he forced himself to stand tall beside Cena. His voice rang out, louder than he thought possible. This shop belongs to the people who fix cars with honesty, not to a bully who only knows how to steal. The words hit harder than Carl expected. A few of the mechanics who had worked under him looked away, shame flickering in their eyes. One even stepped quietly toward Ethan's side. John Cena saw it too. He raised his chin, his voice steady. Walk away, Carl. Whatever power you thought you had, it's gone. You don't own this shop anymore. And you don't own these men. The standoff stretched, heavy and dangerous. Carl's fists tightened at his sides, his breathing quickened. But for all his rage, he could feel control slipping. The crew was no longer behind him. His men shifted uneasily, realizing the fight they'd been promised wasn't theirs to win. Finally, Carl spat on the floor, his glare cutting between Cena and Ethan. This isn't over. You'll regret crossing me. He turned sharply, motioning for his men to follow. The slam of the bay doors behind them echoed louder than before, rattling tools on the walls. The shop stayed silent for several long seconds. The mechanics exhaled slowly, the weight of what just happened pressing down on them. Ethan's hands still trembled, but his eyes were clear. John Cena placed a steady hand on his shoulder, not with words of reassurance, but with the quiet strength of someone who knew battles were won by standing firm. The danger had passed, but everyone in that room knew one thing. Carl Hayes wasn't finished. That a week had passed since Carl Hayes stormed into the shop with his empty threats. The tension of that day lingered, but life moved forward. Cars rolled in and out, the steady rhythm of work slowly returning. For the first time in years, Hayes Auto Repair felt different. Not perfect, not healed, but alive. Ethan Parker stood at the front desk, reviewing invoices. Every paper carried his signature now. Every job had to be approved with full transparency. It was exhausting, but Ethan refused to let even the smallest detail slip into Carl's old ways. John Cena entered quietly, a folder tucked under his arm. He watched Ethan for a moment before speaking. You've been here every night this week. Ethan gave a small, tired smile. Feels like if I stop for a second, everything will slide back to what it was. Cena set the folder on the counter. That's the fear Carl built into this place. But fear doesn't run it anymore. Ethan nodded. The truth of those words steadied him more than he expected. The true test came the next morning. A crowd of customers waited outside before the doors even opened. Word had spread through town. Refunds were being issued, apologies were being made, and the garage was operating under new leadership. One by one, people stepped inside. Some were angry, waving receipts and demanding explanations. Others were skeptical, waiting to see if the promises were real. Ethan and the crew worked tirelessly. They checked records, issued refunds, explained what had gone wrong. For every tense exchange, there was a breakthrough. A woman who had sworn never to return left smiling after Ethan personally corrected her bill. A man who had been overcharged for a transmission repair shook Cena's hand after receiving his money back. The garage, once a place of suspicion, began to breathe again. By evening, the waiting area was quiet. Ethan sank into a chair, wiping sweat and grease from his forehead. His muscles ached, but his chest felt lighter. "You did good today," Cena said, sitting across from him. Ethan shook his head. "We did good. None of this happens without you." Cena's expression softened. "You're wrong. None of this happens without you. I came here to see the truth, and you showed it to me. I could have fired Carl and walked away, but this place needed more than that. It needed someone willing to fight for honesty every single day. That's you." Ethan didn't know what to say. He had never thought of himself as a leader. But the shop was changing, and for the first time, he could see himself in the middle of it. That weekend, the garage hosted something it had never done before. An open day. No charges, no hidden fees. Just free inspections and advice for anyone who wanted to come. Families arrived in waves, children running between the bays, parents relieved to hear honest answers. John Cena moved among them, talking quietly, shaking hands, reassuring people that the business he had once dreamed of building was finally being restored. At one point, Ethan caught him watching from the corner of the shop, pride in his eyes. Ethan walked over, wiping grease from his hands. "You think it'll last?" Cena looked at the busy floor, the laughter, the steady hum of engines. "It'll last as long as men like you are willing to keep it alive." Ethan exhaled, the weight in his chest shifting into something steadier. Not fear, not doubt, but responsibility. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the garage lights flickered on. Ethan stood in the doorway, the smell of oil and steel all around him, but the air felt new. Behind him, mechanics laughed as they packed up, customers waved as they left, and the shop, once a place of shadows, glowed with a rare kind of trust. John Cena walked up beside him, his voice low but steady. "Remember this, Ethan. Leadership isn't about power. It's about protecting people who can't protect themselves. Never forget that." Ethan nodded slowly. The lesson had carved itself deep into him. The garage wasn't just surviving anymore. It was rebuilding, and for the first time, Ethan believed he could lead it into something better.